Hello, my name is Anne. I am a student of English, and I want to tell you something very special. This is my story, how I started practicing English every day and how it changed my life. If you are learning English like me, I think you will understand my journey. I believe you can do it too. One small conversation a day can build your confidence forever. If you want to speak English well, you don't need magic. You just need daily practice. Let me tell you how I started. When I first decided to improve my English speaking, I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends, not even my little brother. I was too shy. I didn't want people to laugh at me or ask too many questions. I was not ready to speak in front of others yet. I needed a quiet place to start. So I chose my bedroom. It became my little English world. Every morning, I would close the door, stand in front of the mirror, and talk to myself. At first, I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, looking at my own face, feeling nervous. My heart beat faster, even though no one was watching me. I whispered simple words like hello and hi. I smiled and repeated them. I tried to say things I already knew. This is a book. That is a window. My bed is soft. These were easy sentences, but for me they felt like a big step. Speaking out loud was different from reading or listening. It was like climbing a small hill that looked very tall when I stood at the bottom. Sometimes I would forget a word. I would stop, close my eyes, and think hard. What is the word for this thing I wear on my wrist? Then I would remember, watch. And I would say it again and again, this is my watch. My watch is black. I like my watch. I repeated until I felt it flow naturally from my tongue. Slowly, the fear inside me became smaller. I began to enjoy it. I liked how the words sounded. When I spoke clearly, I made a small goal for myself. Every day I would speak at least 3 new sentences in English. They didn't have to be long or perfect. They just had to be mine. Some days I said, I am wearing a yellow t-shirt. Other days I said, I am brushing my hair. I said, whatever I was doing. It helped me connect English to my real life. The more I spoke, the more I started thinking in English. When I looked at my desk, I didn't think mesa anymore. I thought desk. It made me feel like English was slowly becoming part of me. One afternoon, I picked up my hairbrush and used it as a pretend microphone. I stood in front of the mirror and said, good evening, my name is Anne. Today I want to tell you about my favorite food. Then I laughed at myself. I felt silly but also happy. I kept going. I love pizza. It is hot. It is cheesy. I eat it with my hands. I waved the brush like a TV host and smiled into the mirror. It felt fun. It felt free. No one was there to stop me. No one to say, you said that wrong. It was just me and my imagination. Some days, I practiced emotions. I said, I am angry, and made a serious face. Then I said, I am sad, and pretended to cry. I was not just learning words. I was learning how to feel them. I acted like I was in a movie, speaking with real feelings. It helped me believe the words more. It made my practice feel real. On weekends, I took it a step further. I started writing down short sentences on sticky notes and putting them around my room. On my lamp, I stuck a note that said, turn on the light. On the mirror, it said, look at yourself. On my chair, sit down, Anne. When I touched something, I read the note and said it out loud. Soon, I didn't need the notes anymore. The sentences were in my head. I also began to listen more carefully to English sounds. I watched short cartoons and copied what the characters said. If they said, let's go, I said it too, matching their speed and tone. If they said, oh no, I made the same voice. I was practicing shadowing, even though I didn't know that word yet. I just knew it helped. My phone became my English partner. I changed its language to English. At first it was confusing. I didn't know what some settings meant, but I clicked and learned. Soon I knew how to say Wi-Fi, brightness, and alarm. I even said alarms with English names like time to speak, don't be shy, and smile, and say hello. I still remember one special day. I was home alone. The house was very quiet. I sat in the living room and talked to the air like I was giving a speech. I said, "Today is Saturday. The weather is nice. I want to talk about my family." I described my parents, my brother, and even my dog. I said what they looked like, what they liked, and how much I loved them. I forgot I was speaking in English. It felt like I was just talking from my heart. But of course, not every day was easy. Some days I felt tired. Some days I felt like I was not improving. I made mistakes. I forgot words. I got stuck in the middle of a sentence and didn't know how to finish. I wanted to give up. I thought, maybe I'll never be good. But then I remembered why I started. I wanted to speak with confidence. I wanted to travel, to study abroad, to make new friends, to feel proud of myself. I could not stop. So I took a deep breath and started again. After weeks of talking to myself, reading my notes and pretending to host a show with my hairbrush, something changed inside me. I felt ready. Not ready to give a big speech or anything scary, but ready to speak with a real person. Someone close, someone who wouldn't laugh, someone who could help me take the next step. That person was my little brother. He had just come home from school. He was playing with his toy cars in the hallway. I walked over and sat next to him. I looked at his blue toy truck and said softly, "What color is this?" He looked up at me, surprised. I repeated, "What color is this?" and pointed to the truck. He smiled and said, "Blue." Then I asked, "Do you like it?" He nodded. I said, "I like it too. It is fast." He laughed. That small moment was big for me. I had spoken English with someone else, and he had understood me. Later that night, I thought, if I can talk to my brother, maybe I can talk to someone else too. Maybe. "Mom?" I walked into the kitchen where she was chopping vegetables. I stood there thinking of what to say. My heart was beating again, just like the first day in front of the mirror. Then I said it. "I will help you cook." She looked at me and smiled. "Okay," she said with a nod. She didn't speak in English back to me, but that didn't matter. I had spoken. She had understood. That was enough. That night, I went to sleep with a new kind of joy. My words were no longer only in my room. They were outside now, reaching other people. I felt brave. I felt stronger than before. The next day, I saw my best friend Sarah at school. We always walked home together. As we walked, I said, "Can we speak English for 10 minutes?" She looked at me and said, "Sure, let's try." And that's where my next step began, speaking simple English with family and friends. I had started the fire inside me, and now I was ready to share its light. Sarah and I walked side by side under the soft golden light of the afternoon sun. The trees along the sidewalk waved gently as the wind passed through. My school bag felt lighter than usual, maybe because I was carrying something new with me, a quiet confidence. I had asked Sarah in English if we could speak for 10 minutes in that language, and she had smiled and said, "Sure, let's try." My heart felt warm. This was not just a walk home anymore. This was something bigger. We began with easy sentences. I said, "How was your day?" She giggled, then answered, "It was good." Math was hard. I nodded. I replied, "Yes, math is always hard for me." We both laughed. Our conversation moved slowly, like a careful walk on a rainy day, but it moved. We talked about lunch, our teachers, and the funny thing our classmate did in science class. We made mistakes. We stopped and searched for words, but we didn't give up. When we reached the gate of my house, Sarah smiled again and said, "That was fun. Let's do it again tomorrow." My heart did a little dance. I had just completed my first real English conversation with a friend. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That evening, I sat with my mom in the living room. She was folding clothes while the news played softly in the background. I watched her for a moment, then said, "Mom, can I try something?" She looked up, a bit curious. "I want to speak in English with you, just small sentences," she smiled. "Okay, try." I picked up one of my shirts and said, "This is my shirt. It is blue. I like this shirt." She nodded. "Good," she said. I continued, "You are folding clothes." "Thank you, Mom." Her eyes softened, and I could see she was proud. She didn't speak back in English, but she listened. That was enough. We kept it simple. Every day I tried to say at least 3 to 4 short sentences to her. In the morning I would say, "Good morning, Mom. I am going to school." In the evening, "I am tired today. I want to rest." She would smile and reply in our own language, but slowly she also started repeating some words in English. "You want tea?" she once asked, her accent heavy but full of effort. I nodded with a big grin. "Yes, Mom. I want tea." Those were small moments, but they made me feel like my dream was growing. It was no longer just in my room or with Sarah. Now my family was part of it too. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to take a big step. I sat with my younger brother Jason while he played a video game. He was focused on the screen, shouting things like "jump" and "yes." I smiled at his excitement. I gently said, "Can I talk with you in English?" He looked up, a little confused. "Why?" he asked. "Because I want to practice," I said, "and I think you will be a great partner." He shrugged. "Okay." We started with his toys. I pointed to a red car. "What color is this?" I asked. "Red," he said easily. "Is it fast?" I asked. "Yes, it's the fastest," he said with a big smile. I clapped. "Very good." We went on like this for 20 minutes. I asked questions and he answered. Sometimes he didn't understand, so I said it again, slower. He didn't laugh or say anything rude. He just tried. And that made me feel strong. Later, I started using English when we watched TV together. I would point at the cartoon and say, "He is funny," or "She is angry." My brother would repeat after me. Slowly, he began to use small English phrases during playtime. One day, he called me from the living room and said, "Come here, Anne, big problem." I ran in only to see his toy train stuck under the couch. I laughed and said, "Oh yes, big problem indeed." It became our game. We were learning together. Didn't stop with my brother. I also began talking to my dad. He worked long hours and we didn't always have much time to talk. But during dinner, I would try to say small things. "Dad, this food is very tasty," or "I like chicken." "What do you like?" At first, he just smiled. Then one day, he surprised me. He said, "I like fish." I looked at him, amazed. "You said it in English," I exclaimed. He laughed. "Little English," he said with a shrug. But that little English meant the world to me. At school, I started using English with more friends. Some were nervous like me. Some were better. But most of them were kind. I would say, "Can I sit here?" or "Your notebook is nice." These were not big sentences, but they opened doors. People began to talk back in English, or at least try. It felt like I had started something small but special, a seed of learning. One day in English class, the teacher asked a question. Usually, I stayed quiet. I would look down, hoping she didn't call my name. But that day, something inside me pushed me. I raised my hand slowly. She looked surprised but happy. "Yes, Anne?" she asked. I stood up, my legs shaking a little. "The answer is, the dog runs fast," I said. The sentence was short, but I had said it clearly. The teacher smiled. "Very good, Anne." I sat down, heart racing but full of pride. After class, one of my classmates whispered, "You did well today." That simple sentence made my whole week. I began to carry a small notebook with me everywhere. In it, I wrote down phrases I heard or used. Can I help you? Let's go. That's okay. I would read them during lunch or while waiting for the bus. I practiced them at home with my family. I started speaking them during real moments. When my mom was tired, I said, "Can I help you?" When my brother looked sad, I asked, "Are you okay?" Slowly, these words became part of my daily life. Even my grandparents noticed. One evening, while visiting them, I helped my grandma carry a basket. She said, "You are growing fast." I smiled and replied, "Thank you, Grandma." She looked surprised, then said, "English girl now, huh?" I laughed. "Just trying." She patted my head. "Good girl." That simple praise gave me more strength. The best part was watching others join in. Sarah and I made a small rule. Every day we would speak English for the first 10 minutes of our walk home. Sometimes we laughed at our mistakes. Sometimes we helped each other find the right words. It didn't matter if we were perfect. What mattered was that we were practicing together. We even made a fun game out of it. If one of us said more than 5 words in our native language, we had to buy the other a candy. I lost the first day, but the next day, I won. We were helping each other grow. With my family, it became a new habit. On Sundays, I helped Mom cook, and we used English words for the ingredients: salt, sugar, onion, milk. We even made a little song out of it. Onion, onion in the pan, sugar, sugar in my hand. My brother would sing along. My dad sometimes joined with funny rhymes. Our kitchen became a classroom filled with laughter and learning, and slowly something beautiful happened. English was no longer a subject. It was no longer a scary test. It became part of my world. It was in the laughter I shared with Sarah. It was in the gentle help I gave my mom. It was in the questions I asked my brother. It was in the quiet smile my dad gave me when he said, "Good job." Every small conversation added a brick to the strong house I was building, my English home. Of course, I still made mistakes. One evening, I told my grandma, "I am cook you dinner." She smiled and corrected me. "I am cooking dinner for you." I laughed. "Yes, yes, I am cooking dinner for you." I didn't feel bad. I felt thankful. Mistakes were my teachers. They showed me the right way. They made me better. One rainy day, I stood by the window, watching water roll down the glass. My thoughts were full of voices. My voice, my family's voices, my friends' voices, all speaking English. I realized I was not alone anymore. I was not just speaking to myself in my room. I was practicing with real people. I was using English to connect, to share, to understand. And that was the true magic. As I watched the rain, I thought, what's the next step? I had spoken at home. I had spoken with friends. But what about the outside world? Could I speak English in stores? Could I ask for help in a library? Could I order food in English? That thought stayed with me, because the next part of my journey was waiting for me just beyond my home, out there, in the real world. The rain had stopped, but the question in my heart stayed. Could I use English outside my home? I had practiced with my mom, my dad, and my little brother. I had spoken with Sarah and even with some classmates. But all of them knew me. They were kind. They understood me even when I made mistakes. The real test was waiting beyond the front door, outside, with people I didn't know. I wanted to try. I was ready to try. But still, I was a little scared. One sunny morning, my mom asked me to go to the store with her. We needed eggs, bread, milk, and a few vegetables. I said yes without thinking. But as we walked to the store, my heart began to beat faster. This was my chance. I could try speaking English here. I looked up at the blue sky and whispered to myself, "Just try, Anne. Small words, you can do it." We reached the store, a small grocery shop on the corner. I loved that place. It always smelled like fresh fruit and warm bread. The owner, Mr. Grant, was always smiling. I knew he spoke some English because I had heard him say, "Good morning" to some customers. That gave me a little hope. Mom began picking vegetables. I walked slowly to the bread section. I looked at the different kinds: white bread, brown bread, soft rolls. Then I saw Mr. Grant nearby. My legs felt heavy, but I took a deep breath and walked up to him. "Excuse me?" I said, trying to speak clearly. He turned and smiled. "Yes." "Dear?" I held the bread in my hand. "Is this fresh?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but I said the words one by one. Mr. Grant nodded. "Yes, that is fresh. Came in this morning." I smiled. "Okay, thank you. That was all. Just one question, but it felt like a big step. I had used English with someone I didn't know. He had understood me. He had answered me in English. I felt like I had opened a new door. Back at home, I told Sarah about it during our evening walk. She clapped and said, "Anne, that's great. You are getting brave." I smiled. It was a little scary, but I did it. She nodded. "Now, you must do it again." So I did. A few days later, I went to the same store again. This time, I went alone. My mom gave me a short list: eggs, sugar, and bananas. I held the small paper in my hand and kept repeating the words in English. Eggs, sugar, bananas. I wanted to say them out loud at the store. I wanted to speak. When I reached the counter, I placed the things on the table. Mr. Grant smiled. Again. "Hello again," he said. I smiled back. "Hello, I want these, please." He nodded and began to count the items. When he told me the price, I said, "Here is the money." My heart was beating fast, but I felt good. I was doing it. Then, something surprising happened. As he gave me the change, he said, "You speak English very well, Anne." I looked at him, surprised. "You know my name?" He chuckled. "Your mom told me. She said you are learning English. You are doing great." I thanked him and walked out of the store with a big smile. That day, I understood something important. People want to help. They feel happy when we try. They don't laugh when we speak slowly. They listen. That gave me more strength. After that, I began to try more. I went to the library next. It was a quiet place, filled with books and soft chairs. The librarian was a kind woman named Mrs. Perry. I had seen her many times, but I had never spoken to her in English before. I picked a small English storybook and walked up to her. "Can I take this book?" I asked. She looked up and smiled. "Yes, dear. That's a good book." I smiled back. "I am learning English," I added. She nodded. "Reading is a great way to learn. Keep going." Her words made me feel warm inside. At home, I read that book slowly. I used a pencil to circle new words. I didn't understand all of it, but I enjoyed it. Then, I went back a week later to return the book. Mrs. Perry asked, "Did you like it?" I said, "Yes." It was about a dog and a boy. They were best friends. She smiled again. "Good job. Take another one." And I did. Every week I went to the library, took one book, and spoke at least one English sentence with Mrs. Perry. I also started using English at the bakery near our house. The woman there always sold sweet cakes and warm cookies. I went there one Saturday morning. I pointed at the chocolate cake and said, "1 piece, please." She gave it to me with a smile. I added, "Looks very tasty." She smiled wider. "It is. You'll love it." I said, "Thank you very much," and walked out with a heart full of joy. These small moments started becoming normal. I would go to the fruit shop and ask, "How much for the apples?" or "Is this fresh?" I would stand in line at the post office and say, "I need to send a letter." Every time I tried, it got a little easier. One afternoon, Sarah and I went to a coffee shop. It was her idea. "Let's go order something in English," she said with a big grin. I laughed. "Okay, let's try." We stood in line, looking at the menu. When it was my turn, I said, "One small tea, please." The man at the counter asked, "With sugar?" I answered, "Yes, please, a little sugar." He nodded. "Anything else?" I shook my head. "No, thank you." Sarah ordered next. Then we sat at the table near the window, both smiling. "We did it," she whispered. "We used English in a real cafe." It felt like a small party, just the two of us, celebrating our growth. From then on, we started planning more places to practice. We went to a bookstore and asked for English novels. We visited a clothing shop and asked, "Do you have this in small size?" We even helped a lost tourist once by giving directions in simple English. That was a big moment for us. One day, I helped a woman in the park. She was looking for the playground. I walked up and said, "The playground is that way." She smiled and thanked me. I felt like a guide, a helper, and all because I had practiced English step by step. Sometimes things didn't go smoothly. Once I tried to say, "I need a bottle of water," but I said, "I need a battle of water." The man at the shop looked confused. I quickly said it again, slower, "Bottle of water." He smiled. "Ah, bottle. Yes, yes." I laughed too. Mistakes were part of the journey. They didn't hurt anymore. They helped me learn. Another time, I wanted to ask for a bus ticket. I said, "One bus, please." The driver looked at me, puzzled. Then I added, "One ticket." He nodded. "One ticket. Okay." That day, I wrote the full sentence in my notebook. "I want one bus ticket, please." I read it many times so I could say it better next time. Over time, I noticed something amazing. The fear I once had was becoming smaller. I no longer felt shy to speak. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't hide. I felt strong. I felt ready to speak in English wherever I went. It was like learning to ride a bike. At first, I needed help. Then I fell a few times, but slowly, I found my balance. And then, I could ride freely. One evening, my dad took us to a family restaurant. The menu was in both our language and English. I told him, "Let me order for all of us." He looked surprised but nodded. When the waiter came, I said, "One chicken sandwich, one vegetable soup, 2 glasses of juice, and 1 bowl of rice, please." The waiter wrote it all down and smiled. "Very good English," he said. My dad looked at me with pride. "That was perfect," he said. Later that night, I thought about how far I had come, from speaking to myself in my room, to talking with Sarah, to using English at the store, the library, the cafe, the bakery, the bookstore, and even at the restaurant. Every place had given me a lesson. Every conversation had made me stronger, and still, I knew there was more to do. I had used English with people. But now, I wanted to challenge myself even more. What if I spoke in front of a group? What if I joined an English-speaking club or took part in a class activity? What if I didn't just use English? I shared my thoughts in English. That was the next step waiting for me. I was ready to speak, not just to people in shops or parks, but to many people together. I was ready to stand up and say something in English with full confidence. And so, my next journey began. The classroom lights were bright, but my hands were still shaking a little. My teacher had just asked me to stand and share something about my weekend. It wasn't a big speech. It was just a short talk in class. But still, my heart raced. I stood up, took a deep breath, and looked around the room. "I went to the library," I began. "I read a book about a dog. The story was fun." A few of my classmates looked at me and smiled. Some nodded. I felt their eyes on me, but I didn't feel scared. Then I helped my mom bake a cake. It was chocolate. A few kids chuckled. I smiled too. "That's all," I said, and sat down. My teacher gave me a thumbs up. "Good job, Anne," she said. My best friend Sarah squeezed my hand under the desk. I felt proud. I had just spoken in front of my whole class, in English. That moment stayed with me all day. When I got home, I looked at myself in the mirror. "You did it," I whispered. "You really spoke in English in front of everyone." My smile was big and honest. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was full of thoughts. I remembered every word I had said in class. I remembered the feeling in my chest, the fast heartbeat, the little fear, and then the happiness that followed. I wanted that feeling again. I wanted to speak more. I wanted to speak better. The next day, I talked to Sarah. "I wish we could speak English even more," I said. "Like with new people, too." She nodded. "Yeah, it would be great if we could talk with others who are also learning." That gave me an idea. That evening, I asked my older cousin Lily for help. She was good with computers. "Lily," I said, "can you help me find some online English-speaking groups?" She smiled and nodded. "Of course. There are many places where people chat in English. Let's look." She opened her laptop and showed me a few websites. There were online clubs, apps, and groups where English learners from all over the world came to talk and practice. Some used video calls. Some were just for voice chats, and others had text messaging too. I was amazed. This one looked safe. "And simple," Lily said, pointing to a group for teenagers learning English. "It's friendly. You can talk to girls and boys your age. Want to try?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, but I'm nervous." She smiled gently. "That's okay. Everyone in the group is learning just like you. No one will laugh. They all make mistakes too." So I joined. The first meeting was the next day. I was so nervous. I checked my microphone 3 times. I brushed my hair and wore my favorite hoodie. I sat at my desk with a notebook, a pencil, and my water bottle. The clock moved slowly, and then finally, it was time. The screen lit up and I saw faces, boys and girls from different countries. There was a girl from Brazil, a boy from Egypt, 2 sisters from Japan, and even a boy from a town not far from mine. "Hello, everyone," the host said cheerfully. "Today, let's introduce ourselves." I watched others speak. Their English was simple, like mine. Some spoke slowly, some forgot words, but no one laughed. Everyone waited patiently. Everyone smiled and helped. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and said, "Hi, my name is Anne. I live in the U.S. I like books and chocolate cake. I want to speak English better." And that was it. Everyone smiled. Some clapped. One girl said, "Yay, Anne." I laughed a little and felt the nervous cloud disappear. After the meeting, I wrote in my notebook, "First online meeting." I spoke. I did not freeze. I felt happy. That was just the beginning. I started joining the group every week, sometimes twice a week. We played word games. We talked about pets, food, school, holidays. One day we all had to describe our room. I said, "My room is small. The wall is blue. I have books. I have a soft chair." Another time, we played a game where we had to guess the word someone was describing. I said, "It is round. You eat it. It can be red or green." Someone shouted, "Apple," and we all laughed. Week by week, I felt my English grow. I made a new friend in the group named Sophia. She lived in Mexico. Her English was also simple. We began messaging after the meetings. "How are you today?" I would write. She would reply, "I am good. I go to school. And you?" We talked every day. We made voice messages. We laughed when we made silly mistakes. One time I said, "I like your mouse," instead of "I like your house." She laughed so hard but kindly corrected me. "House, not mouse," she said, still giggling. I learned to accept my mistakes. I learned to laugh. I learned that practice is not about being perfect. It is about being brave. One day the host of our group asked, Who wants to lead a small game next week? My hand moved up before I could stop it. I will, I said. I couldn't believe I had said that. The next few days, I planned a small game about animals. I made simple clues. It is big. It has a long trunk. It is gray. The answer was elephant. I practiced many times with Sarah. You'll do great, she said. When the day came, I led the game. My voice shook a little at first, but then I smiled and just kept going. Next clue, I said. It lives in water. It is big. It jumps. It is smart, a boy answered. Dolphin, I smiled and said. Yes. After the meeting, the host said, Great job, Anne. You were clear and fun. My heart felt like it was flying. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. I led a game. I spoke for 10 minutes. I felt like a teacher. The online group became part of my life. I looked forward to it every week. It was more than just practice. It was friendship. It was fun. It was learning in the best way, by doing. One week, the group had a show and tell day. I brought a small photo frame with a picture of my family. I said, This is my family, my dad, my mom, and my brother. We are happy. We go to the park together. It was a simple talk, but it came from my heart. Everyone clapped. A girl from India showed a drawing she had made. A boy from Spain showed a toy robot. We all shared. We all listened. We all spoke. That group taught me something no book ever could. It taught me to speak with people, to listen, to wait, to try again, to keep going. And best of all, I realized that I was not alone. All around the world, boys and girls like me were trying. We were all walking the same path step by step. The more I spoke online, the more I spoke in real life. I felt stronger. I used new words. I answered faster. I even helped another girl in my school with her English homework. One day, Sarah looked at me and said, Anne, you are really becoming fluent. I smiled. It's all because I keep practicing, every day, with people. And she was right. But I wasn't done yet. Now I had one more dream. I wanted to speak English to help others, to make them feel strong too. Maybe one day I could become a mentor in the same online group. Maybe I could lead new learners and say to them, Don't worry, I was like you once. You can do it. And so my journey continued. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when I sat by the window, holding my notebook close and watching the raindrops race down the glass. My English group had just finished another fun session, and my heart still felt warm from the laughter and learning we shared. The game I led that day had gone well, and Sophia had sent me a message saying, You did great. You sound more confident every time. That one message made me think. I looked at the notebook in my hand, the one I had filled with new English words, sentences I had practiced, short notes about the group meetings, and all the small victories of my learning journey. It was full. Each page showed how far I had come. But I wondered, could I go even further? Could I make English a part of everything I do, not just during meetings or homework? That thought kept growing in my mind like a seed. I started to notice something. I was using English more and more, even when I didn't plan to. One morning, as I was brushing my teeth, I caught myself saying aloud in the mirror, Today is a good day. I feel happy. It was a small sentence, simple and soft, but it made me pause. That's English, I realized. And I just said it without thinking. It happened again while I was making breakfast. I reached for the bread and said to myself, I will make toast. I love toast with butter. No one else was around. It wasn't for a class and it wasn't for a meeting. It was just for me. I smiled. Speaking English was starting to feel like breathing, natural, easy, like brushing my teeth. That's when I made a promise to myself. I will practice English every single day, not as homework, but as a habit. I started small. I changed the language on my phone to English. At first it felt a little strange. Some words were new. I had to pause and think. But soon I was reading settings, messages, calendar, and alarm like they were second nature. It felt exciting, like a secret code I was finally starting to understand. Then I made another change. I began watching cartoons in English. Not the hard ones with fast speaking, but simple ones. Shows made for younger kids. I watched with subtitles at first. I heard the words, read them, and repeated them. I laughed at funny scenes and repeated jokes out loud. Once, while watching a cartoon about a dog who loved pancakes, I heard the line, "I'm so hungry, I could eat a mountain of pancakes." I paused the video and laughed. Then I repeated the line, using my best cartoon voice. "I'm so hungry, I could eat a mountain of pancakes." My mom peeked in from the kitchen, confused, and I burst into giggles. English was no longer just a subject. It was becoming my friend. Every morning, I greeted myself in the mirror with English words. "Good morning, Anne. Today you will smile. Today you will try." And at night, before bed, I would whisper, "Good night. You did well today." My notebook became a kind of diary, too. But I wrote only in English. I didn't worry about mistakes. I just let my thoughts flow. One day I wrote, "Today I helped a new girl in class. She was shy. I told her, 'You are welcome here.' She smiled. I was happy." Some days I wrote about the weather, some days about my dreams. I even wrote short poems. One of my favorites was, "Rain falls down, soft and slow. English words begin to grow. In my heart, in my mind, every word is one of a kind." Writing like that made me feel like a real writer, even if no one read my words but me. Soon, English was in every corner of my day. When I helped my mom cook, I would say, "Now we mix the eggs. Now we add salt. This is fun." My mom would laugh and say, "English lesson in the kitchen." While walking to school, I would look around and name what I saw in English. Tree, bird, cloud, bicycle, lady in red dress, boy eating ice cream. It was like a game. My mind became a moving picture with English captions. I started labeling things in my room with sticky notes. Chair, table, window, lamp, pillow. I even put a note on the mirror that said, "You can speak English." Reading became part of my habit, too. I read simple English books. I kept a small one in my backpack and read it during lunch. Sarah joined me sometimes, and we took turns, reading aloud. We'd stop and guess the meanings of new words and laugh when we guessed wrong. English songs helped me, too. I chose slow songs with clear words and listened carefully. I sang along even if I didn't get every word. One day, I learned the lyrics to a song called "Count on Me" by heart. I sang it in front of Sarah. She clapped and said, "You should sing that at school." The more I used English, the less I feared it. It became part of my skin, my smile, my rhythm. One morning, while brushing my teeth, I remembered how nervous I used to be, how I had once stared at books and felt confused, how I had been scared to talk, and now, look at me. I was speaking every day, laughing, thinking, and dreaming in English. That day, I wrote a big sentence on a piece of paper and stuck it on my wall. English is not just something I learn. It is something I live. And it was true. Sometimes I still made mistakes. I still forgot words. But it didn't bother me anymore. I didn't feel small or slow. I felt proud. One weekend, our online group had a theme called Daily English. Each person had to share how they used English every day. When it was my turn, I shared all the little ways I had added English to my life. I told them about my mirror talks, my phone settings, my sticky notes, my poems, my kitchen practice, and my English diary. Everyone clapped. The host smiled and said, "Anne, that is beautiful. You are living with English now." And she was right. After that meeting, I felt something shift inside me. It was no longer about learning fast. It was about enjoying the journey. Just like brushing my teeth or tying my shoes, speaking English had become something I just do. Some nights while lying in bed, I whispered English dreams into the dark. One day I'll travel. I'll make new friends. I'll help others learn too. English had become my habit, my helper, my voice, and I knew this was only the beginning.